Hi everybody, hopefully we are now live on Facebook. We're here for the Tech Week Tech Talks. Welcome to everybody who's joining us either on Zoom or on Facebook Live. This week is Tech Week at Creative Folkestone. This has been brought to you by Southeast Creatives, point to logos at the back that I've carefully put there for you. I'll tell you a bit more about Southeast Creatives and that programme at the end after the talk. During the talk, you're welcome to type in questions if you're participating on Zoom, if you do that via the chat, or if you're on Facebook and you have any questions to ask us, if you write them in the comment section, Owen and I will be in the background looking at Facebook and we'll be able to ask Wayne your questions afterwards. The Zoom participants currently we haven't got anybody on Zoom joined us, but if we have any people joining us on Zoom, they will be able to ask some of the Q&A at the end as well. If you do, I'll come to only of that at the end about how they do that. Okay, so can I please welcome Wayne Conyers to us? He's come from, he's the director of youcallit.com, who are based right here in Folkestone, just up the road from the courthouse. And they work in Folkestone, but they work globally. Wayne is now going to give his talk. And I've just lost the end of it to give you the title because it's gone full screen, so I can't any longer see my see my talk. But I will let you carry on, Wayne.
Oh, thanks very much, Karen. And it's always nice to do these. Be the Monday guy, as we were just talking beforehand and stuff. It's nice to have the opportunity to be able to kind of talk to everybody about kind of what we do and about kind of the concepts that we're looking at sort of going forward over the next couple of years, especially during COVID as well, because that's made everything a lot more relevant. I pulled together a little presentation, nothing heavy, just that we can run through this so I can explain kind of my background and then kind of introduce the concept that we're kind of trying to get to today. So we work globally as a business and have spent a lot of time refining services to allow businesses to collaborate in one space. And that kind of concept really from us is software as a service and platform as a service. But how can we relate that into a community environment? How can we make kind of us communicate a little bit better, more cohesively? So really just to explain about myself, You Call It as a business, we've been running for 10 years and we use the system to deliver IT services globally. And that means we connect companies from Spain to the UK, France to Netherlands, etc., etc. And they all work in the same way, which I'll cover off. Over that time, we've made 25 incidents across 80 different countries. We're active in 141. And every time we do something, we do it the same way using the platform that we've built. And that takes a lot of buy-in from the suppliers and the clients, but it ultimately gives us one way of working that everybody's used to. And we essentially manage third-party activity. So there'll always be somebody that delivers the service. We sit in the middle and manage that relationship between the client and the service provider. And that's something that we've kind of, the system that we built has been built and developed while we were doing that. So over the last 10 years, it's grown around what we do. Effectively, we ring fence the sectors that we work in, and this was kind of the initial way of working. If you start managing in sectors, effectively what you do is you're allowed to bring in tools for those various sectors that are relevant to those environments, again, under the same overall platform. So you can see some of the services, and I'm not going to go too much into what we do as a business because it's Monday morning, but you can see there that we work in various IT sectors. And effectively, we deliver the hardware services, the maintenance and the support. So there will be a physical visit from a physical person that goes and addresses whatever issue that may be, project support, maintenance, installation, all those kind of things. What we then did, and again, this is a bit of a kind of crazy screen, there's a load of things that we built in order to make that happen. So we profile, so if you look at the example here in printer services, we ask our suppliers what services they provide, what charges they run to, what certifications they've got, what accreditations they've got, and we effectively profile that supplier right at the beginning of the relationship. There's a very good reason for that because all of the things that they complete then automate the service that they deliver. So for instance, if they're not a printer company and they've not put their printer service company, we wouldn't use them for those services. So it almost allows us to compile and mass absorb a load of data for loads of individual organizations, but also by doing that, it sets our system up so that we're working with them and collaborating with them in the right way, in the right areas that we need. We then integrate things in. So as a platform, we're trying to build a platform. What you're trying to do is to stop people from going outside of that platform. You want everybody working in the same way. You don't want to waste time by people having to go and log off to another system to communicate. So what we've done is we've integrated a load of tools into the platform we've built. So for instance, our messaging service is underpinned with Telegram. Our logistics service, we tap into all the couriers so that we can track and ship and trace. We've got the cohesive way of messaging and communicating between the client and the supplier, which is all in the same platform. And what we're trying to do is so that when our customers log in, they then haven't got to go and log into 15 other different applications during the day. And this really is where we'll centralize the kind of back end of this conversation. So that's just what we do. And for us, it's a really cohesive way of working. The reason people like using our services is that they could do things in 15 different countries, but when they use us, we do everything exactly the same way. And a unified process, I think, is key when you're looking at kind of how you build systems and how you develop software. So if I get into the kind of, this is the techie bit now. I did say there was going to be some. It is Tech Week after all. So just to explain software as a service. So software as a service is a software distribution model in which third-party provider hosts applications that make them available to customers over the internet. It is what, I know that sounds a bit complicated, but effectively software that provides a service. And that can be a multitude of things, which I'll show you in two slides time. Then what we've got, again, there's some examples there. Google Apps, Salesforce, they're all software that provides a service. And then you need to look into kind of what is a PaaS and PaaS, and this is the techiest bit we'll get to. So what we're trying to do at the moment is to build a platform as a service, or specifically an application as a platform as a service, which means that we host it on Azure. It's a cloud-based service. We don't need our clients and our suppliers to provide any infrastructure apart from the technology to use the applications. And effectively what we're trying to do there is to bring and combine in so that we've got a centralized, and I always refer to it as a hub or a play as opposed to a platform. And for us, our hub takes in other systems. So we API into other systems. We have structured email. We've built specific components within our platform and our software that allows us to effectively translate another person's system and put it in a way that we can relate and translate back to it, but also we can translate the other way. So effectively we sit in the middle and we absorb different other systems and various other ways of working to make it more cohesive. So what we've done is created a set of unified tools. Very sort of, if you look at what services are provided by software today, and if you look at them, you've got things like personal services, and I'll categorize these shortly: public services, home and security services, family group services, business services, communication tools, social media, crowdfunding, raising money for charity. There is so much out there, and it all does amazing stuff, and it all allows us to communicate a little bit more effectively. Saves a lot of paperwork, various other things, but there's no overall cohesion with all of this. So just to recap, if you look at the differences, and again, this is just a kind of slide to understand what PaaS is as a platform as a service and what software as a service is. The other two categories are kind of further up the scale. Really, my focus exists between PaaS and SaaS, because that's what we've done effectively, is build software that's turned into a platform that then delivers a cohesive service. I love the word cohesive, by the way. How does this all relate? So I've gone through all of this technology stuff. For us, it kind of we look at it this way. How can we create software which centralizes all the things we face every day, reduce the amount of time that we spend ourselves on applications? And I would ask, you know, if you're listening to this morning or watching me, thank you very much, by the way. How many apps have you used this morning? You know, it's what, 10 past 10. I know myself that I logged on to my email this morning to make sure that I still had the invitation for this. Obviously, then I've gone on to my Facebook just to make sure that my social life's kept up to date with. I then had to jump on Microsoft Teams for a quick call with one of my staff this morning. I had to log into my accounting system, QuickBooks, to just check a couple of invoices out. I then had to, you know, it goes on and on and on. And for me, a lot of these applications, they replicate the same functionality, but we're all used to doing things and we're just being bombarded by stuff. So how can we simplify that out is a kind of key question. More and more applications are being built and implemented in everyday lives. This has an impact on how we can manage people, how we interact with work, on the social lives. You know, when I worked in banking in 2000, I didn't have a mobile device. Everything I did was in the office. I worked long hours, but when I left the office, the hours were mine. These days, as I run my own business, my hours are whenever somebody emails me, and I was responding at 10 to 11 last night for a tender. Those things, it consumes you. So how do you get back some of your life in all of this, not just as an individual, as an organization, however it may sort of stack? We then look at functionality and form. What do applications do? You know, how do they interact with you? How do you interact with them? What is the key functionality? You know, WhatsApp, Telegram, Facebook Messenger, all are messaging services. They all practically work in the same way, but people sit in different platforms and have different preferences. And then really, let's just have a quick look. So how does the world spin? How do all these applications sit, you know, and how does that kind of relate to you? So for us, these are the things that we look at when we're trying to build a system that allows us, and again, going back to that central hub, that we can take all this information in and provide the user with one place as opposed to multiple places where it's coming at you from all sides. Managing the relationship is key to any success of any platform. The communication exists. There's a real good reason for it being there. Combining real world services. So we have a physical service, an engineer goes and does a physical service. When you order something from Just Eat or whatever, a physical service is provided to you. How do you combine those two processes so that they work together? APIs. So for instance, for us, we provide APIs to our clients. And what that is a piece of program that allows people to API in and to develop into our software in very basic terms, and allows kind of dual functionality and allows us to talk backwards and forwards. And then software, however automated, needs the users to be comfortable. You know, we've built a system that works in multiple countries and multiple languages. If we'd have made it the most complicated thing in the world, people wouldn't have used it. So you've got to be able to buy the user in, and you've also got to be able to give people tools they can understand what they do. It's great having a fancy system with 10,000 features. Over the years, we've taken features out because it can overwhelm people. And this is where the kind of overwhelming comes in. If you look at the world, the way it spins today, you have lots of personal services, the whole mix there. I know if you look through them, I know there's the Uber Eats, to Tinder, to TripAdvisor, to Check and Trader, but a lot of these things that we use on a daily basis. You know, we'll order an Uber, you know, we'll order some food, we'll go on shopping sites, we'll order those bits and pieces. If you're single, but perhaps you'll try and find a relationship. There's a whole load of services that sit on that thing there, you know, that you use on a multitude of bases. The phone is the convergence of technologies. That's the centralization. You know, as your sat nav and your camera and your emails and all those applications that used to sit outside. The problem is now you've got hundreds and hundreds of applications and everything else that you would use all the time. Let's add in some business and collaboration tools. People listening from a business perspective, you'll see some of them there. You know, we migrated over to Teams right at the beginning because we're very Microsoft based. But Facebook have now got Workplace. There's now Slack that a lot of people use internally. There's Google that is still a big driver for businesses. And then you've got, you know, I put us there as well, as you call it, .com. But there's a whole load of tools that you may use or need to use on a daily basis. The Instant Ink example is there simply because there's also different applications within business. You know, if your ink is running low, there's an ink reminder service that automates that process. So there's loads of different tools, again, but they all require input from the human being that's using them. Then you've got logistics. Us as a logistics company, obviously, we work with lots of logistics people. I'm pretty sure most people during COVID would have ordered something to get rid of the boredom, or just because they were doing the house, whatever. You know, you've gone into it, you've bought something from Amazon, you've then tracking it on a package or an app. There's more, again, just more stuff coming at you. Then you look at conference communication tools. We were on Zoom this morning. I was on Teams earlier today. Then you've got obviously your own kind of communication tools, things like WhatsApp, Skype, FaceTime, Telegram, you know, and other conferencing calls and stuff. And then we've got kind of funding and money services. So if you look at kind of all the things that have, you know, come to the last kind of decade, crowdfunding services, business funding services, you know, there's a whole different things. And again, these are all things that we input in on a daily basis and collaborate with, you know, sometimes without even realizing in a day, you know, you've gone and donated some money to somebody or is doing something. And that's part of the application kind of overload that we're all experiencing. Then you've got social media apps. I've kind of benched these for a bit because I find social media quite invasive. And what we're trying to look at here is how we streamline processes. Social media comes across a broad spectrum, you know, and can be used in many different ways. I am going to use it as an example to show you how things can be slimmed down though. So if we then look at public sector, so now I get a daily text message from the school about what's going on for my youngest. There's also the school gateway, so you can monitor your children's progress and communicate with the school. The NHS have started to automate certain processes, and you know, and if you've got an NHS dentist, you'll get a dentist appointment on your text phone and stuff. if you go over the Dartford Bridge or through the tunnel, you've got to go onto Dart Charge and log in. If you're a business like me, you need to use HMRC services. Your doctors are trying to automate those processes as well. So if you just have a look at for that for a second, and I would ask all of you, in a week, how many of those tools potentially are you using, and how many of those things have a cross purpose? For us, when you order Uber Eats and there's a process between your food is there to there, it's the same for us as a service engineer. It's just we've adapted the technology, all of the people here, to suit the needs of what they need to fulfill. And what we're trying to look at is how do you pull some of these circles together? As one person, you want to be able to have a central place to manage. And I go back to that hub thing that I keep talking about. So can people adapt? Of course they can. If you look at social media stats, you'll see that the adoption rates are only going up. And I would imagine this was done in January, these stats, 3.8 billion total number of social media active users. I would have imagined through COVID that this figure would have only increased due to the increase in using more applications and more tools. And again, just some statistics there to show you that the world is willing. If 3.8 billion people are using social media, then there is a definite, we know how this works, and we know how all these things work, and we know how all those applications work that we just looked at here. How do we collectivize them? So for us, how do you evolve a centralized hub? And it's already happening. The world is already kind of doing this. And I'm going to use social media as a quick example. So as a business, obviously, every business has these days a social media presence on a variety of different platforms. Some may be a more visual business, so use Instagram. Some like us may be a more formal business, so we use things like LinkedIn and Twitter to announce what we need to do. Others may have a more sort of fun side. And again, there's various different kind of social media outputs. If you're a business and you're updating every single one of them, that's a lot of time. So tools exist now to collaborate. And Hootsuite, for instance, is just one example where what that allows you to do is to centralize your social media functions, especially as a business. So you don't post on each one, you can collaborate, schedule posts. And what that's actually done is taken that functionality and to make a smarter, more collaborative tool for the user. So the user now isn't accessing 5, 6 different sites. It's now using one to push all that information back, and the information coming back in so they can be more responsive to the target audience that they've sent those out to. They can obviously pull those in as well and stuff. So you've got loads of different ways of making tools more collaborative. Essentially, if you look at Microsoft with what they've done with Teams, so you had Skype, you had the people using Link, you had people on various different things. You've got Outlook, you've got Yammer, which never really took off. So what they've done is they've hubbed that under Teams, and they've made Teams more collaborative. And they've also allowed Teams to be external collaborative. So there's loads of different things and ways that people are looking at doing things. This is a great evolution, because now people are starting to look at, okay, well, hang on, we've got 10 tools here, but we can banner them under one and create one objective, as opposed to kind of having to do X, Y, and Z. So they're collaborative tools with centralized functionality. For me, I'll spin this around the other way. So you've got Microsoft applications that were hubbed into Teams. So what we've done there is, and this is a generation step, is to actually say, okay, well, now we've got one way of communicating with all of these other tools. If we've now got a central hub, and I've used my logo there, sorry, a bit of selfless promotion, I know. But if we've got one central hub, and we've got a Teams, and we've got a Hootsuite, and we've got other things that are collaborating and centralizing those tools, effectively what we've got is the start of this process. So we've taken that software, we're working then and collaborating with an evolution of to application, a platform, and then we are working as a platform as a service to collaborate those tools all together. And we can do that at a time over. The next generation to that is to make a hub that then communicates back, and then centralized tools which centralize collaboration. So rather than, we've then got one place. A user now in a home has got a streamline of things. All the public sector messages come into one hub. All of their business things come into one area. And again, that's the concept that I'm kind of trying to hit at. There's no definition to that. And I'll ask you that question at the end of this. But essentially, if you've got a centralized hub and you can get into that via API, there's a standard open source, whatever the way may be within those sectors. What you can start doing is effectively centralizing all of your applications and your hubs and whatever it is you're using to streamline your own process, which gives you a lot more kind of just clear head time, and I think one of the things is we're overwhelmed with a lot of applications and functionality these days. If we can centralize that, and that's what we've done in our business over the last kind of 10 years, then I think you create a much greater, richer experience, not just for the individual, but for the world in general. And, you know, we've all been kind of in various stages of lockdown over the last, well, 3-4 months. So we've all had to look at how these apps work. And I would argue that probably most of the people today, it's probably like a little bit too much. Now, I found it myself a bit overwhelming in terms of just how much kind of form and functionality there is out of there. So really, for me, and I know hopefully there'll be some questions, but for myself, it's more a question to you is, you know, in the technical world and the way and in the world that you work in, how could you hub those services? You know, how could we provide a community service that hubs in all the local services that allows that person to streamline what they're doing? And also now we're looking at kind of local services and local produce. You know, we've all gone back to locally sourced. You know, how do we encourage that? How do we make those businesses more accessible? You know, they don't need the infrastructure. It's all provided within the hub. They just need to be able to kind of develop and grow their services and collaborate with people, which is very important. So for me, hopefully that's not been the most uninteresting chat on a Monday morning, first thing. So yeah, that is my presentation, and literally the concept is to look at how we can kind of start streamlining all the things that we deal with in an everyday life. That's
great. Thank you very much, Wayne. I'm just bringing up my video again, so
no worries.
You can see me when we have a chat. So yeah, we've had quite a few viewers on Facebook Live we're still on Facebook. So if anybody on there wants to ask any questions, please do. I'm actually looking on I've got my tablet here.
Right, no worries.
Multi-device as well, multi-application, watching Facebook.
I've got a bit of paper, so I'm going old school, even though it's a TikTok.
So if anybody wants to write any questions into the comments section on Facebook, please do now. I'm aware that Facebook's lags slightly behind. It's by a few seconds. So while I'm talking away, you can be typing your questions in. So yeah, that was really interesting, Wayne. I've got a few questions myself for you. I'm just going to bring those notes up and find them. So I mean, I've been overwhelmed completely by the way you've described it. I'm looking at that thinking, yeah, that's me, totally overwhelmed by how much is out there, how much information I'm supposed to utilize in my own business or just in general life. I'm not sure where I would start with this. So have you got sort of suggestions as where would you see the starting point?
You could start. Yeah.
I'm kind of like, yeah, I get it. I want to do that, but where would somebody like me start with a small?
I mean, I think you can start. You can start anywhere, Kat. I think it's in your own kind of life. It's, you know, I mean, take it right down to a base level. You know, how many things do you use that do the same job?
Yeah.
So, you know, how can you look at maybe reducing that down so that your exposure to multiple applications is less? If you look at, you know, how would we start this as a potential area? A while ago, we did look at a kind of how we could potentially use the system in a different way. And one of those suggestions was, you know, in a community environment, if you look at kind of the vulnerable, you know, especially the elderly, a lot of the things that are designed for them these days are intrusive. They require the user to do something, whereas the hub would work behind the scenes. So if you've got appointments being scheduled, for instance, you could streamline those in so that the user isn't having to do anything. You know, all the appointments so, you know, an elder that might have a social care visit. So you can schedule those in. You can then have the visits fed back from that person using an application that feeds back into the same system. The doctor's visits, the same thing. So what you're doing is centralizing all of that data, and that care can be then delivered more effectively for that elderly and vulnerable person without them having to use wearable technology or be given a tablet or check in and things. You know, one of the things that technology does is it becomes invasive to a point. So how do you maintain a quality of life for somebody that may not want to use technology or may not understand it, but yet it still have benefit? So that was one of the areas that we initially looked at in terms of how could what we have built just be used to the more effective kind of use.
Yeah, great. Another question.
No worries.
So thinking about, I mean, all of this technology, and they're trying to sort of all these different organizations that are doing all these different things. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the money that's being wasted by not collaborating, you know, talk a bit about.
I guess it's not so much money being wasted, because, you know, anybody that's investing in technology and anybody that's trying to make an application or a platform, you know, we take our hat off to them. We've spent 10 years doing it and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously, you know, we're not Google, we're not Microsoft, so you know, we don't have, you know, hundreds of resource and lots of money to throw at this. We had to evolve the system as we've gone and stuff. I think what it is for me is it's we need to start looking at how we can bring the tools in. You know, we don't need the assault of applications and notifications and everything that's happening on, you know, when you get off this, like even now, you're on Facebook, you're on Zoom, you know, you're going to go back to your emails, you know, how do you centralize all of that for yourself? And I mean, I think especially, you know, Hootsuite for me in social media is a very good example of why it's in the presentation of how you know, in yourself, that may have benefit, because for somebody that does a lot of social media and a lot, so, you know, that allows you to centralize and collaborate. So there's quick wins. In terms of wasting money, I think what it is we've just got to start looking at how we can bring tools together. You know, for us, there's an open source element to our business. You know, we don't close our walls and have, you know, tight kind of paywalls in terms of people being able to develop for us and stuff. I think more open source is the way to go, and just people collaborating in sectors.
Yeah.
You know, if one sector that's got multiple applications can slim that down into one collaborative tool, then that's one collaborative tool away from a hub, because then the hub just has to work out how it communicates with that central, and so on and so forth. So it's more about kind of applications, you know, will come and go constantly. It's about how we use them smartly and how we collaborate together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be great if we all sat down and went, right, how do we make these tools one? Because we're all doing the same thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the idea of collaboration and not thinking less about the wasting of money, but how we can use our time more efficiently is really interesting, and sort of how by doing this we're spending less time going through all these different applications, doing all that work, and we can spend more time on our businesses and on our whatever it is we're trying, our end goal is of our business or our service that we're providing. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. We've got a customer that, you know, that spent nearly £4 million on a software solution that they never implemented.
Wow.
Because
yeah.
it was never correct. All
Right.
of those tools exist.
Yeah.
It's just nobody put the tools in the right order for the customer. So, you know, they're the things that you want to try and avoid. You've got the tools out there. Why go and reinvent the wheel? And for us, you know, integrating with Telegram, there's no need for us to go and build a full communications and suite if we can leverage off of other technologies. But
Yeah.
what we're doing is centralizing that functionality.
Yeah. Great. I haven't got more questions coming in as such, I don't think. I don't know whether anybody on Facebook wants to send any more in.
No, it's absolutely fine.
We'll give you a few seconds because it takes them, as I said, there's a little bit of a lag. So I'm still watching you speak on Facebook while I'm actually speaking. So let's see if anybody else. I've got one here coming in. It says, as an independent business, how much do I decide on the best apps to use with so much on offer? Do you have any tips? That's a good question.
Yeah, I would. Obviously, it depends on what sort of business that you're well, what business you are really. From our point of view as a technological business, we've tried to look at what's most effective for us. You know, and I think also, you know, it's really easy to get with a business. Let's go and get an Instagram. Let's go and do a social media profile and stuff. But what do you actually need it for? And I think at any business, the best starting place is use the most amount of functionality that you need.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you want to be an online business, you have to have a presence. So the tools that you need to be aligned with those with managing that process.
Yeah.
As a new business, I would say, I mean, the essentials are always, if you're starting up from scratch, you need to be able to email, you need a website, and you need to be able to communicate with people. Start with those basics. You know, if you're looking at how you can reach your local community, if you're a small business, if you've got produce or whatever the case may be, look how you can collaborate and add value to your service. You know, it's really easy to give somebody with an order a website address and a login code. And, you know, and that essentially gives you an ability then to communicate with people and stuff. And for us, you know, building systems that allow you to fulfill orders is very simple and stuff. So it depends on the business type, but I would say don't go and do the clever stuff first. Get really comfortable with the basics and everything. Mm-hmm. You know, I would spend more time designing a website than I would potentially kind of putting up my Instagram profiles and pictures, because ultimately for my business, that's where I need to kind of be focused and stuff.
Right. I've got some more questions. Well, one more question. It says, hi Wayne, what about data security?
Yeah.
With collaboration, surely there's much more risk of insecurity, data loss, theft, and those sorts of issues.
Totally is. So for us, obviously GDPR compliance is something that we have had to go through for a long process now, and that's changed since that's been involved and stuff. How we deal with data is very securely. So we use Azure host services. We also have the system encrypted. There's various layers of encryption that sit within the system. Obviously, you always run a risk. Nothing is completely safe in life, despite the best interest. But the information that we hold as well potentially is always screened out at user level. So there are encryption methods that we use, and I think it's a really good point, because security, your data is very vulnerable, and actually it raises a bigger agenda about if you've got a hub, you've only got your information in one place, because that information would then be transacted across, as opposed to you putting your card details everywhere and having it saved in your browser and God knows what else and stuff. So potentially there is a win for more security, because if you're in a hub, your data is held centrally. You're only sending data that you need to the organizations that you're interacting with. So I think that actually is a really good point about how potentially a hub could actually enhance your own personal security and your data protection as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. I think that might be it. Anybody? Well, I keep saying anybody on Facebook, but obviously we've got to give them a few seconds anyway if they're going to ask anything else. So
if anyone's got any questions after this, by all means, Karen, stick them on the thing, and I'm more than happy to answer them. And if the individuals or whatever the case may be as well. It's an interesting topic. I'd really like people to think about how it affects everyone. So let's see how you. I
think it's something that's very much in people's consciousness. They're aware that they're constantly having to go and do all these different things to get the same job done. Exactly. And I think it's and a lot needs to be done to streamline things and make our lives a bit simpler. I liked when you said earlier about how in your business you've actually removed some of the features and simplified things. And I think we're all desperate for a more simple life, if we're honest.
Yeah, especially these days with COVID around us as well and stuff. So yeah, definitely.
So as I said, there's a bit of a time lag through Facebook. So I've got another question here that's come through, which possibly, so Paul asks, how do you incentivize big firms who make a living from data collection to make a crust? How do you incentivize them to share data?
That's a good question, really. We don't really do it. I mean, that's not really an area that kind of when we work with our clients, our biggest hurdle is kind of showing them a concept that they're not really used to, because it's transparent. So for us, if they use a supplier in Spain, that they know who the supplier is.
Yeah.
So they have a direct relationship. We just facilitate the relationship. So in terms of the big, that's I'd have to think about that one. And that's not me trying to deflect it. It's just not something that we kind of overly across in our sector and stuff. In terms of managing their data, we manage MIF lists that have 10,000 devices in various locations and everything else. We need to manage that securely. But in terms of the data collection from, I'd need to have a think about it, because I will come back to you on that one if that's all right.
That's great. So just for anybody, the Facebook video will actually stay on Facebook. So anybody who wants to revisit this and ask any questions, then Wayne will be able to get back on it later at a time he can and answer any questions. And we'll obviously, if there's anybody who really wants to get put in touch as well, who's got really, wants to talk to Wayne about all this, then his details will be put in the comments section later with information about how to contact Wayne and find out more about what they do. So I don't know whether there's any more coming through. As I said, I can see me talking now, so that's a good sign. I'm catching up. So yeah, if anybody else has any last few bits of questions. Is there anything you wanted to say to wrap your bit up, Wayne, at all, before I talk a little bit more about Southeast Creatives?
Just really, no, just that, I mean, obviously, thanks for the opportunity and stuff, and if there's one cheesy thing to finish off on, is it's kind of, this whole talk has been to kind of try and change the concept of there's an app for that. It's kind of more like, let's kind of like, there's a hub for everything. So, that's kind of where it is. But no, if anyone wants to talk, I'm more than happy. We throw a lot of ideas around in the business. It's not always business focused, and it's nice and refreshing to get other people's points of view. So no, by all means, thank you very much for today, Karen.
No, thank you very much. It was really interesting. I've gone away with loads to think about now, so I'm sure the people have been watching, and we've had a good consistent number of people watching live through Facebook as well. So thank you very much to those people for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you, Wayne.
No worries, thank you.
We'll say our goodbyes, and we hope everybody enjoyed it.